Hey folks, the subject of this unit is how to write emails, how to write reports, how to write whatever, as long as you know how to write that specific type of document. Okay, so that should be the focus. Although in the unit we're focusing more on emails and letters, you should know that there are some other types of reports or documents, correct? That you should be able to know how to write. And the goal here is to illustrate a few of those different types so that you understand, first of all, when to use each of these and the differences in formatting, in the type of the language that you use, whether it's formal or informal. Okay, the length of the document is also very important. Okay, so again, we're focusing on report writing. Okay, so the merits of written communication will depend on the different forms that you have in order to write that communication, right? Now, what you need to focus is, what you need to understand is each type of document serves a specific purpose. And obviously, you should understand, you should have very clear in your mind what is the purpose of that document. Once you understand that, then it would be easier to define the type of document that you are going to write. And once you have that in mind, you can properly organize the writing of such document. Okay, so just a brief historical explanation here. The word report is derived from the Latin word reportar, which means to carry back. A report is the compilation of information that has been sought out, collected, sifted, organized, and written to convey a special message. So basically, what you're looking at here is a report is nothing more than a document that you write in order to communicate something. Okay, now again, there are many different ways of communicating something. That's why you have the different types of report documents. A few benefits of reports: it is a communication tool to provide information to managers. It can also be a planning tool to present information, past, present, and future information, and you should use it as a controlling tool, for example, for appraisal and inspection information. So, for example, let's say that your company is going through an audit, right? So the company had to hire someone to audit their information systems, for example. Well, that auditor will have to, at the end of the audit process, the auditor will have to write a report saying, hey, this is what I found. These are the security holes, for example. These are the vulnerabilities that I found. And here's a recommendation of how to fix these. Similarly, as far as appraisal, right? Let's say that you want to sell your house. Well, but you have no idea how much you should sell it for. Well, you can call a specialist for appraisal, whether it's a home, a vehicle, whatever the case might be. But at the end of that appraisal, this professional will write a report, right? The appraisal report saying, hey, this is how much I believe that you should sell it for, and this is why. Okay. Again, there are different types of reports. So these types are, the definition of the type is based on its purpose, frequency, media, style, and number. Okay, I mean frequency, the number of reports that you're going to generate, the style, which is how you are going to communicate that. So reports can fall in any of these categories, right? So you have a purpose. As far as purpose, you have informational reports that present a record of previous events to appraise progress and developments or to understand the situation. For example, compliance and regulations report, similar to what I just mentioned when your company hires a auditor, right? You may also have analytical reports. That is a report that provides data analysis and conclusions. Writers sometimes also supply recommendations. These reports intend to persuade readers to act or change their beliefs, right? So observe that there is a purpose here. In analytical reports, you have a specific purpose, such as convincing your boss, for example, that it's important to replace the current IT infrastructure that the organization has, right? If we don't, there is a chance that the systems stop working, and if the systems stop working, the company is going to lose, let's say, X amount of dollars per hour that the systems are down, right? And compliance reports, they are prompted by the government. Compliance reports answers questions such as how much profit did the organization earn. These reports comply with laws and regulations that protect employees, investors, and customers. So observe that it's similar to information reports, with the difference that this is actually a requirement established by the government. So, for example, if we are in a academic institution, right? Any educational institution, they must be FERPA compliant, which means that they must comply with the regulations that were established by FERPA. Well, now, in order to verify if that specific institution is actually FERPA compliant, well, they're going to need a specialized auditor in order to conduct that analysis, and that auditor will generate, let's say, an information report. The difference is this is not going to be just an information report, because the auditor is reporting what he or she found, or what they found, according to the compliance regulations, or in this case, FERPA regulation, right? Justification recommendation reports. You also have, well, I believe that the name is quite self-explanatory. You also have the yardstick reports, which assesses the different alternatives available by applying the same criteria to each, such as cost, return, and risk. Feasibility report. These reports are basically establishing how feasible it is to execute something, right? And you have research reports that are much more scientific. So make scientific inquiry of events, attitudes, and behaviors, and supplies specialized information for managerial decision making, right? Observe that here, the institution, whether it's an academic institution or a business, right? They are not executing anything. They're not purchasing anything. They're not planning, or at least not in a short period of time, they're not planning on doing anything. It's just a research report. Hey, what about the alternatives that we have as far as marketing campaign? Well, we don't exactly know how our target audience is going to behave, or what our target audience is actually purchasing as far as the products that we sell, right? So we need to do some research, and based on the results found from that research, then we're going to generate the research report. Based on the research report, then we can start thinking, we can start planning what we're going to do next, right? As far as proposals, there are two types. So you have the business plan with a persuasive report that seeks to convince investors to fund a new company, right? And this is actually kind of a standard. Whenever there is a new company that is to be founded, then you're going to need a business plan that is proposing what the company is going to do, but also how the company is going to return the investment to the investors. And also you have research proposal to persuade client company or funding agency to accept and grant funds for undertaking the research project. Now, the difference in a research proposal is that you are also asking for money, right? You are also trying to convince the stakeholders that it's going to be worth it to invest in that specific project, but this is not a business. So it's just a study. It's a research proposal that can, from there on, generate the creation of a business, but not necessarily. And you also have press reports, which, especially nowadays, where we have a pretty good understanding of what it is, right? So companies use public relations to influence the general public through the mass media, such as newspaper, radio, and television, right? So, for example, when usually we see press reports even more frequently when something goes bad, right? So if a company suffered a data breach, so now they are going to generate some or issue a press report explaining what happened. You can also have the report being defined by the frequency. You may have a periodical issuance of that specific report, or you may have special occasions, right? There is no predefined frequency. The media is also very important. How you are going to disseminate that specific report. Is it going to be oral or written, right? And obviously the style, very important. You may have a formal, informal, or semi-formal document. And we are going to take a look at the different types of reports, and those different types of reports are associated with the style, the language style that you are going to use. So, for example, here, formal versus informal reports. Informal report, you can name a memo or a letter or email, although there are many situations where by standard, you're not required to use a formal language in an email, but there are most of the situations, well, I'm sorry, not most, but many situations, you are expected to use a formal language in that when you send an email. So let's say that you're applying for a position in a company, right? And you're supposed to send your CV, right? Your resume by email and also a cover letter. So all the documents that you need to send, you're supposed to send them by email. So your application is sent via email. Are you going to write, hey, this is Diogo speaking, and I just saw that you guys have an opening for whatever the position might be. So I am pretty confident that I will be the best fit for this position. Well, as you requested, I am sending the documents. Please observe the documents, analyze the documents, use them for your appreciation, and if you feel like it, just shoot me an email or a text. Well, that is quite informal, right? You're not going to do that. Obviously, you may have letters that are formal as well. So, but there are some characteristics here that are really important, right? In an informal document, that document is probably going to be shorter or short. Formal documents, they tend to be longer, right? As far as organization, informal, less structured, formal, much more structured. So you can obviously see the differences between a formal report and an informal report. But I recommend that you keep, and I am going to send these slides to you. So I recommend that you actually keep a copy of these slides, okay? Also, you have the difference between individual reports versus committee reports. And again, I believe that this is pretty self-explanatory. Individual reports are mostly routine business reports and are mostly written in a prescribed form, usually by a person, whereas a committee report, they are prepared by more than one individual, right? Generally, a committee is formed to compile a technical or research report, which is complex in compilation, right? There are obviously some steps that are necessary to make committee work constructively. Obviously, first of all, you're going to need the formation of a committee. So let me give you an example in IT, right? In order to, so as you know, in information technology, everything that has to be done by an organization, a plan, a document plan is required. So, for example, if the company is going to write their information security policies, well, they're not just going to randomly pick someone, a staff member, to write the information security policy or policies. They actually need to create a committee, right? Form a committee. Same thing for how to write a disaster recovery plan. Well, they need a committee. They need to form a committee to come up with that disaster recovery plan. So as you can see, this is a much more complex and obviously situations that require much more care, that are more delicate, they will require a committee. Okay? So again, I recommend that you guys keep these slides with you so that you can always go back to it in case you have any questions. Here you have a table that is differentiating individual and committee reports. Okay? Now, finally, as far as the format of reports, you may have the memo, you may have a letter, you may have manuscript, and you may have printed forms. Now, observe that these are not the only types, right? There are many, many different types, but these are probably more common, okay? So a memo format, basically, you are trying to communicate some more essential things, but it's much more focused on communicating something very quickly, okay? Just reminding people of something. That's why you have that joke. When something happens and you were not aware of it, people like to say, well, I didn't get the memo, right? That's because a memo is a short document that is it just exists. It is issued to notify something or to let people know about something or to remind people about something, okay? And obviously there are some information that you need to have in a memo, right? Now, tips for memo reports: use an informal conversational style. That's very important. And here is a sample, a memo format sample, right? Which obviously you can always find online. This is just one example, but you can actually find memo format templates online for free, okay? A letter, you need to have many more fields, let's say, much more information in there. So information such as the company name, address, date, subject, and reference, inside address, attention line, salutation, subject, body, complimentary close, signature, identification, and finally enclosure, right? So as far as formatting a letter, here are some tips. Again, you should always go back to it. And for manuscripts, It is basically a letter context form, right? So you should use a manuscript formal for long, complex, or formal reports and proposals, right? A covering letter or memo will be attached to it, most likely a covering letter much more than a memo. And some elements of a manuscript, you're going to have the terms of reference, methodology, findings, and recommendations. And finally, you have the annual report. Annual reports, besides being mandatory, are also relevant information sharing and image building documents. These reports detail the progress achieved by the organization in the reporting period. Okay? Observe that a typical annual report, since it's an annual report, which leads you to understand that this is going to be a very long, comprehensive document, which means that it will contain much more information, right? So here again are the type of information that you're going to find in that type of report, okay? And research writing. Well, basically, you can have an academic research report and a business research report, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, academic research report is a report that is not actually, it can be a journal paper, for example, right? The goal there is not to report the situation of a specific business. It's much more about finding information or proposing new methodologies that may or may not become something that will be used in business or industry. Now, a business research report is business driven. It is still a research, but it's a research that is being conducted because the business, that specific business, is the interested part in this process. Okay. And obviously, like I said, you're going to have access to this document. So I strongly recommend that whenever you are having difficulties or you don't quite remember what you should have in a specific document, what the format should look like, I recommend that you go back to this document. Now, it's really, really important that you pay attention to how to write documents according to the message that you are trying to transmit, the situation, the purpose, okay? That will define the type of document that you should write, and the type of document, as you saw, will basically define the type of language that you're going to use, the length, the amount of information that you're going to include there. And this is going to be very important not only in your academic career, but also in industry, in business. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in our next seminar. Bye-bye.